Welcome to today's lesson, Memos, a short introduction. What is a memo? A memo is an internal document. That means this is not something that is designed to be distributed outside of your organization. It's for communicating within an organization. It has a very specific format. It is very short and focused, and a memo can be either electronic or a hard copy. Memos are a document that are used frequently in a professional setting, and it's an important skill to have to be able to create a good memo. So a memo, which is short for memorandum or reminder, is used for internal communications regarding procedures or official business within an organization. Unlike an email, a memo is a message you send to a large group. You might send a memo out to a whole department or to everyone at the company or everyone on a particular committee. You might write a memo to inform staff of an upcoming event or to let everyone know about a change that's going to be happening within the company. Also, an email tends to be a little more informal. A memo is an official document. Copies are kept on file and it can be used as a reference. One of the main issues with the memo is that it is short. Short. No more than 2 pages, preferably 1. The shorter, the better. The goal is to include all the information that's necessary in an easy-to-follow format and have no additional information. So, the format for a memo. You start with the header. In your header, you clearly label your content memo or memorandum so your readers know that they are receiving a memo. And then you include to, from, date, and subject. And you would do that in a row. So to, colon, and who the memo is to. On the next line, single-spaced, from, colon, and who it's from. The next line, single-spaced, date, colon, and the date the memo is set out. And the next line, single-spaced, subject, colon, and a short description of the subject. Sometimes people will use re instead of subject, so re, colon. That's short for regarding. This information is relevant providing content, like who you're talking to and why you're communicating with them. So here's an example of what that format would look like. If you had company letterhead, you would have the company letterhead at the top, memorandum to, from, date, subject, or it could say re instead of subject. I'm writing to inform you that. So in the very first paragraph, you get right to the point. Why are you sending this memo? As our company continues to grow, this is an example of how you would introduce the next section, which is the evidence or reason that supports your opening paragraph. So the first paragraph is to the point. I'm writing to inform you that there is going to be a change in policy regarding leave time. And then the next section is why you are making that change. And then please let me know if you have any questions. In the meantime, I'd appreciate your cooperation as whatever that is takes place. So the final section is to the sort of call to action, letting people know a conclusion. So do you have any questions? Notify so-and-so if there are any issues. If there will be a problem complying with this within your department, please notify such and such. If you have a second page, which you want to try to avoid, but sometime you might be sending a memo about something that 2 pages is actually short. Here's a fun story. When I first started out in a professional setting, I did not know how to do memos because I had not had this class. And I was used to school and writing papers in which you perfect the skill of taking a little bit of information and stretching it out of a lot of pages. The exact opposite of what you want as a memo. The first memo I sent was 10 pages. My boss brought it back to me and said, "This is not a memo. People don't have time to read 10 pages. This is a report. Now create a memo that tells people about the report, gives them the gist of it, and lets them know the longer report's available if they want more information." So learning how to get your information across tight and focused can be a bit challenging for college students. So you're going to try to keep it on to one page, but if you're summarizing or sending a memo about something that's very complicated, it would, your instinct is that it would be 10 pages, 2 pages is short. So the second page of a memo is on plain paper. It does not use the letterhead. You include the recipient name or abbreviated subject line. So you don't have the full to, from, and just a short version so people know that it's attached to that first page. Put a page number on it so that they know that it's the second page, and include the date. So on your regular memo, list the persons receiving it either in alphabetical order or rank. It really depends on the company culture. Some are more hierarchical, in which case you put the most important first, and so on down the line. If it's a more egalitarian, then you go in alphabetical order. If you're sending a hard copy versus an electronic copy, put the sender initials by the name to show that it was approved. If it's an electronic, save it as a PDF. That means for the hard copy, you print it out and then you would initial right next to the from section. If it's an electronic, save as PDF, you do not initial it. You use the word for the month rather than the numbers. This is to avoid cross-cultural confusion, because in Europe they put the month first, then the date, then the year, and in the United States we put the date, the month, and then the year. Make your subject line very specific. You want to make it really easy for people to read it and understand it. If the memo is copied to multiple people, this means not that it's going to multiple people, but if you're copying other people. So for example, if I was sending a memo out to my department and I wanted the dean to have a copy of it, I would put CC and then the list of names to the right of the two. Or you can put it at the bottom like you would do in a letter. And then the same with a letter, put ENC : with the enclosures at the bottom if you're sending the memo as an attachment to something else. So for example, in the story that I told you, if I was sending the report to people I thought were interested, I would have put a memo on the top explaining the report and the gist of what's in it, and then I put ENC report, so they would receive the report with the memo. So your first paragraph is a purpose statement paragraph. This is the gist of what you're telling them. It's like the thesis statement in a paper. You want to write that first paragraph so even if they did not read the rest of the memo, they don't have time to worry about why you're doing it, or that first paragraph gives them the gist of the message. Use headings. This is not a paper, this is not a report, so you want to use your formatting to make it quick and easy to follow. So use headings. If you've got multiple paragraphs, go ahead and say summary, rationale, contingencies, divide each. If you've got multiple paragraphs, give a little heading to each one so everyone is clear what it is that's in there. Feel free to use bullet points, use outlines, whatever you can do to make the content shorter, but without losing clarity. And then the last part should always be recommendations or action items, what it is you want the people receiving the memo to do. So let's go a little bit more into detail on the content. On that first paragraph, you want to quickly and clearly state the purpose of your memo. You might start with, I'm writing to inform you, or I'm writing to request. You want to get right to the point. A memo is meant to be short, clear, to the point. You want to give the most information up front and then use the following paragraphs to go into a little more detail. Again, so someone should be able to read that first paragraph and really know what you're saying, and the following paragraphs are your backup, your details. In that second paragraph, you want to provide context or supporting evidence. So say your memo is informing the company of an internal reorganization. If that's the case, the second paragraph would say something like, as our company continues to grow, we've decided it makes more sense to separate our video production team from our content team. This way those teams can focus more on their individual goals. So the first paragraph would have explained the reorganization. The second paragraph gives the rationale. If there's a third paragraph, you want to include your specific request for each employee. If you're planning a team outing, you might say, please RSVP with dietary restrictions, or please email me with questions. If you're informing staff of an upcoming construction of the building, you might say, "I'd appreciate your cooperation during this time." Even if there isn't a specific action you want from the people receiving the memo, it's helpful to include how you hope they'll handle the news. We think this is exciting news. We are taking these difficult steps in order to keep everyone safe. So whether you expect them, how you want them to receive it emotionally, and whether or not you expect them to respond to the memo, to do anything because they've received the memo. Here is one sample of a memo, so you could kind of see what it would look like. The N in notification should be capitalized. So the top line, this is something that would not have letterhead, so you've got the company name at the top, memorandum, you've got the date from, to, and the reason we've had a particular success in our last 3 battles. This is from Darth Vader to the Imperial Stormtroopers. This has resulted in a particularly large number of irate prisoners. These prisoners have been writing rude graffiti comments about Lord Vader and the Emperor. While those who have been caught have been put to a hideous death, the prison cells remain covered in graffiti. Therefore, it will be necessary for the stormtroopers to clean off the graffiti during their on-duty time. Rotation schedule for cleaning will be distributed by the supervisors. Please keep a close watch on your prisoners, as this is not an efficient system. It is easier to prevent the graffiti than to clean it. We are all happier in a clean prison. Thank you for your cooperation. Quick, to the point, very clear what's happening, very clear why it's happening, very clear what's expected from the people receiving the memo. Here's another example of a memo. Notice how the format is a little bit different, but the basics stay the same. The top label, to, from, date, subject. Notice how, now this one is a more complicated topic, so it's got more text to it, so they've divided it up by labeling the paragraphs. That makes it easier to digest, so even though there's a lot more writing on this, it's not so overwhelming. And you could see, oh, a purpose, I don't need the background, or I only need to know the significance, or I need to read all of these paragraphs, this is all important information. Here's another sample of a memo. This is one on letterhead. See, you've got the company information on the top, so you don't need to type that in. This would be a company format that says memo, the to, from, a line underneath that top part is quite common. And then you see the paragraphs. I'll let you look at the content. And there you go. That's the basics of how to do a memo.